back meadow of around my house. And remember, I was talking about planting a forced garden. I'm one of those people, I really believe strongly in planting a garden for wildlife and for people, but I don't like a garden too controlled. I understand the beauty of the traditional Japanese garden where everything is hand worked to just a fine-tuned art. I understand all of that. But for me, if you're planting for wildlife and planting for yourself combined, your garden has to be semi-wild. You have to be okay with that. So that's why we're standing in my wild upper meadow. I don't mow this. I don't clip the grass. I let it take a life of its own. Okay? I think that's really, really vital. And I learned to love it that way. Also, if you plant a garden for nature, wildlife, and yourself, there comes a point when the garden begins to mature. Now, this is really, really important. There comes a point when the garden begins to mature and it becomes its own living being, its own living organism. And it will grow its own plants and maintain itself. And one of the great exciting things about that is trees just come up out of nowhere. And dogs chew up your garden like that. And they just come up out of nowhere. And if you're looking up at this tree here, this is a black cottonwood tree. And this tree, believe it or not, planted itself. Right now, this tree is probably 50 feet tall, maybe 70 feet. And it's planted a number of other trees from it too. And it found, remember I talked before about a tree finding its happy place? Maybe it's reached down through the ground and found a spring. Maybe it loves the soil. This tree could not be happier. It is happy, the definition of happy. And it makes me happy to look at it, to know it planted itself. Now, 9 out of 10 gardeners would simply have cut this tree down when it first showed up. They would have called it a weed. And what is a weed anyway, but something we don't want? And yet this tree, being a cottonwood, is one of the major parts of the habitat of this yard. And it found its place and it grew itself. Welcome in my garden. Now, one of my dreams when I moved up here was I love aspen trees. I love to photograph them. I love to look at the leaves sparkling in the sunlight. So I thought, I'm going to plant an aspen forest. And look, here it is. 20 years, and I got an aspen forest. In my fall colors. These are my trees. I love aspen bark. It always tells stories, you know. You'll see bear scratches, squirrel bites. I love it. More than anything, the joy an aspen brings me is its leaves when they sparkle in the sunlight. To me, it's one of the most beautiful things in nature. It calls to my very heart and soul. If I'm going to spend some time meditating out in the woods, laying in an aspen forest, it's got to be one of the best. I remember when we used to do our classes up in the Marble Mountain Wilderness, on our long hike in, about halfway we'd go through an aspen forest. And I always looked forward to it. It always pulled me up the trail. I'm going to get to that aspen forest. So, literally, I think I've heard that aspen trees where they grow really thick, like in the Colorado Rockies, in the Eastern Sierra, they're considered their own organism. So you'll notice all these trees, roots from the trees bring up new sprouts, new trees. So literally when you're looking at an aspen forest, even on the side of a mountain where it might be thousands of acres, it's really one tree. There may be thousands of trees, but they all started from one tree. They're one organism. I mean, that is an amazing thought. So they're literally some of the biggest organisms on the planet. And again, I want to repeat over and over, trees equal life. They make our air. They give us our food. They give us our homes, our shelter, wood. They give us beauty in our life. They give us friendship. They give us connection. They give us shade. They ask nothing in return except to just be allowed to live and make the world a wonderful place. So listen to the trees. Plant them, grow them, protect them. Dedicate your life to caring for trees. Dedicate your life to caring for trees. Literally, if you do, then you will have a life well lived. I'm going to walk you over now to our pond, little pond we built for wildlife in the back of behind the house, where there's all these fall color trees coming off right now. Passing another great fir tree and a great pine tree. You can see a bird nest up there in one of them. That's another thing I try to do, put a lot of bird nests out in the trees. Now I want to speak while you're looking around here. This pond we built for a lot of reasons. We built it because it's beautiful and I love the sound of flowing water in my home when I can hear it. And I love the frogs that come into the pond and the fish that come in here and the habitat that it creates. It brings wildlife to our home, and that fills our home up with community from the natural world. And it's surrounded by a variety of trees. I don't know if I mentioned, but our garden has about 240 varieties of plants. That's a really wonderful amount of plants that provide different habitats for different beings. Most of this pond and the trees planted here were planted by a high school class that came for a week. All the kids volunteered and planted all these trees. And that was probably about 15 years ago. And look what's happened now. So those kids left their legacy here forever. And again, you know, when we talk about trees who find their happy place, this cottonwood is gone bazonkers. It is so happy. Look at it. You want to be happy? Look at that tree. You'll be happy. It's happy. And it watches over me. I feel protected. This tree just checks me out a lot, you know, and I feel safe around it. I feel protected. And then you have all these varieties of colorful trees that grow, the leaves changing. We're going to have to walk around and check out these red leaves from this oak tree here. Here's something you can do. Now that's a hug. Here's the kind of hug you really want to give a tree. Little grunting, a little groaning. And let it hug you back. Not much better than that in life. Look at the sun through some of these. I mean, really, is there anything more beautiful in the world than those leaves in the sun with that pattern? That's the most beautiful thing in the world right this very moment. I'm looking at it right there. And I can walk along. I'm going to really blow your mind. I'm going to show you this eastern oak. Now that is beauty defined, wouldn't you say? And yes, I do mean my face. No, I'm kidding. The tree and the face together. That is so beautiful. I mean, look at that. Oh my God. How does nature figure this out? Color, color, color. And you see, the more you appreciate it, you almost take on a natural high. It's the energy that emits from trees. It's this pulsating energy, their life force that comes into you. And when you're in a forest, you get it from all the trees together. Remember, trees are individual beings that live in force with thousands, if not hundreds of thousands, if not millions of them. And that force becomes one community. And that community creates a home for every single thing that lives on the planet, including humans, and a safety network. So the individual gets to express itself in its unique way, and the force becomes the whole, the community, the home. Now, is there not a lesson in there for humans? If we would just stop killing each other, fighting all the time about the most ridiculous stuff, and just learn the simple lessons that trees have to teach, every single problem that we have would be solved. They would all go away. We would be able to live the most greatest lives ever as earthlings on this earth and be happy. Actually be happy. We wouldn't have to kill each other. There's so much to learn. And even another great lesson that comes from the trees is when the end comes, when a tree dies, which they all do eventually, they do it with so much dignity. Often if they don't get blown over in a big storm or something like that, if they just die from old age, insects eating them and so forth, they do it slowly with dignity, and they get more beautiful. And as they lose branches, they have these silhouettes, more beautiful. And as they die, wildlife finds them, and more insects live in the trees, so more birds come. Woodpeckers make holes, birds make nests, owls come and eat those birds, hawks come and eat those birds, martins come and eat those animals. And the dying tree becomes living in another way, full of life. And then eventually when the tree dies and actually falls to the ground, what happens? It turns into compost and grows another tree. Full circle. There is no lesson on earth you need more than that. That is it. If we learned from the trees, our problems would drift away. Plant a forest garden. Plant a tree. Get out in the woods and climb trees and be with them. Appreciate them. Meditate with them. Hang out with them. Have fun with them. Take your friends and your family and the ones you love with them. Walk your dogs in the trees. Literally, it's the greatest thing you'll ever do in your life. Oh,